Welcome to today's Rural Innovation Economy, or RISE, application webinar. This session is designed to help inform potential applicants about the RISE application and provide further information about the funding opportunity. We're so glad you can join us today. This session is being recorded. Participants are in listen-only mode, so throughout the workshop, you can submit your questions and comments by typing them into the questions chat panel. These questions will be documented and may be answered during the session. A copy of today's presentation, as well as a RISE fact sheet, is available as a handout you may download to your own computer. To access closed captioning, use the link provided in your chat box. It will open in a new window. To get us started, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Karama Neal, Administrator for the Rural Business Cooperative Service for USDA Rural Development. Dr. Neal.
Dr. Neal?
Yes, thank you. I apologize for that. So thank you and welcome so much to all of you for being here. I'm Karama Neal, Administrator of Rural Business Cooperative Service at USDA Rural Development. I'm thrilled to welcome you all here today. We have representatives from universities, community colleges, economic development groups, cities, counties, states, tribal nations, nonprofits, CDFIs, philanthropies, and more. Thank you all for your excitement and your engagement about the new Rural Innovation Stronger Economy Grant Program. Your excitement, your engagement match ours. The team at RBCS, some of whom you'll meet today, has been working on RISE with growing enthusiasm. We are hopeful about the potential of RISE to help rural communities maximize local assets, implement an innovation-driven approach to economic development, and create new businesses and high-wage jobs. We hope that you will share what you learned here today with others, build partnerships, submit your own application, and continue to connect with rural development, USDA, and other parts of the federal family to implement your economic development plans. To that end, I'm happy to introduce Mark Brodziski, Deputy Administrator for Rural Business Cooperative Services. Thanks again to each of you for being here. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Neal. We appreciate that you're able to join us this morning and kind of set the stage, kind of opening of our conversation this morning. And welcome to all. We're kind of monitoring the attendees, and we see that attendee number continuing to climb. So we hope everybody is not too challenged in connecting to our meeting today, but glad you're able to join us and share in this conversation. We have a bit of an ambitious agenda today. We definitely want to make sure that we're introducing and providing an overview of the program, but we're going to dive into the details of the program. It's a short time frame. We know that for the first application cycle, so we're going to try to take advantage of our communications today and hopefully not bury you too far in the detail, but ultimately want to make sure that you're comfortable with the insights of the program, but also know how to and where to find more information and how to communicate with us as a follow-up to kind of help you through this process. For those of you that maybe already started looking at some of the basics of the program, you understand that the RISE program is very broad in scope, in construct and design, but it does have a couple of key critical conditions or criteria to it. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about both, kind of the broad scope of the program, but also focus on just one or two of the key critical criteria. First of all, as you may understand, RISE purpose is to support a partnership of a working group, serving a regional community. The group would be led by a lead applicant, basically the entity that's going to administer kind of the grant in the program activities. The working group will serve a region, establishing job accelerators and conducting related programming for that region. Now, we're not defining what related programming means. And I think reflecting on the changes over the last 18 months on how we think about what's a center or how do networks or partnerships connect and work? We know that things have changed a lot in the last 18 months. So we think that the broad outline in the construct of this program is going to allow for really adopting a lot of those innovations and bringing in maybe partners and networks that 18 months ago might have been more of a challenge. But we think there's some great opportunities as we push forward. Now, the purpose of a RISE project is really to improve the ability of distressed rural communities to create high-wage jobs, to accelerate the formation of new businesses with high growth potential, and to strengthen rural economies. We'll do this through helping rural communities identify and maximize local assets and connect to regional opportunities, networks, and industry clusters. The program focuses really on the industry sectors kind of in that region. What we're envisioning is maybe a variety of not just industry sectors, but different stages of industries. Some regions may focus on an industry sector that's ripe for innovation. We envision maybe industry or regions serving industries around agriculture, maybe taking agricultural technology and value-added processing and expanding their ag economy in the region. Could be involved in bio-based product manufacturing, renewable chemicals and other bio-based products, or other value-added of natural resources. There may be some regions that will focus on industries that maybe are in decline and desperately in need of innovation or expansions of use of their community assets. We're thinking of some of the regions of the country that used to be very heavy into pulp and paper and wood products that could greatly benefit from innovation and applying of innovative technologies. There could be other regions focusing on leveraging some of their industries, maybe taking skills and technologies utilized in advanced manufacturing and applying it to other technologies or other industries around medical technology or other. So we're really excited to see kind of the types of industries or industry sectors that the regions will focus on. Now, a couple of kind of the key points that a applicant or a region must address is identifying the region. The region must include identifying key community assets and the industry that you're going to serve. And then within that region, there must be either a cluster or potential for the development of that industry. Geographically, the region must include a majority of the communities in the region must be low-income communities, and we'll have that defined for you, and our team here will address that a little bit. And the population of the region is also critical. The region should have a population of 50,000 or less, or if it's greater than 50,000, the region consists of rural communities and rural areas. And we also have a definition for that. But again, the scope of the program as a whole is very broad. So we hope to engage today and share some questions and communications with you. Today, we're going to focus really on the immediate timeline, really the application cycle that we're in. Again, we know that it's a pretty short deadline, but we also have some longer term objectives. The rule that we're working on is published and open for comment. So as you're going through, starting with today, or as you're working through an application, if you have any feedback as to the rule itself, the guidance in the rule, kind of the conditions or criteria, please provide us comments regarding the rule. We're also looking at some longer term activities as to how we can support the regional partnerships. Those that, of course, that receive the RISE grants, but also what we can do in joining federal partners and assisting regions that are not successful in the RISE grants. We know that our funding in this program is limited, and based on the attendance today, we know there's a lot of interest in these type of activities. So we're also going to look long-term as to how we can continue to connect, with the networks, with the regions, to help bring other programming to you. Today, we encourage you to use the question and answer features, the chat features, ask questions, share input. If you have comments, share that. If you have some thoughts that you'd like to share with us, please do so. We're glad for that. And last, I'll wrap up by encouraging you to go to the program website near the end of the presentation. We'll provide you some websites. Please go to the program website, and there's a sign up button on that page. And signing up on that web page will automatically send you any updates that we make to that page. We'll provide a recording of this session. We may host other training events or other events that'll be posted on that web page. along with some Q&A, frequent asked questions, some application tools, and we'll continue to update that website over time. So again, I encourage you to go to the website and subscribe to any updates. So with that, I think I'm turning this over to Dave. Dave, all yours. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much. Thank you for that great overview and possibilities for all of you on the call as to what you can do with RISE funds and improve your communities and get the word out. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us to learn more about RISE and how you can help your communities. There's been tremendous support and interest in RISE since it was authorized in the 2018 Farm Bill, and know that the program regulation was also greatly influenced by your comments and looking at programs not only in USDA Rural Development, but other programs as well. Looking over the webinar registrations, I note that as we press over 700 attendees in this webinar, we have people from all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and 2 territories represented in our audience. So that type of broad support and broad geographic distribution is exactly what we were hoping for. Know that Will Dodson and I have replied to over 40 direct email inquiries since the public regulation published last week. And I'm certain that Dr. Neal and Mark Brodziski have also fielded your questions about RISE. We're pleased to have you here and learning more about RISE and how it can impact your region. But since you are here, I want to take this time to remind you that RBCS has many other programs to assist businesses in your rural communities. And I strongly encourage you, but only after this webinar, to go into our website at rd.usda.gov and read the program overviews. As economic development entities, you're our strongest supporters, and local entrepreneurs look to you for the advice and resources to assist them. We are here to be your partners and strongly encourage you to know about our programs and refer people to one of our 47 state offices for assistance. Now I turn the program over to Will Dodson. Will is our program specialist extraordinaire and our team lead for delivery of the RISE grant program. So Will, take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Wanted to welcome everybody today to this webinar. We had over 1,000 folks that registered for it, and currently we've got over 700, and the number keeps growing that are signing in. Starting out, just wanted to tell you that this session is recorded, and just wanted to reiterate that it's recorded. It will be distributed, and we do have handouts. We have a fact sheet that has a lot of relevant information about the RISE program, as well as a copy of the presentation today that you will see. So the program has been very popular since it's been published, and as Dave mentioned, we've received dozens of emails with good questions, and we're working hard to respond back to those emails, so we try to get back to you that day. Just have a little patience with us. As I said, this has been popular, but we're trying to get answers back to you to your questions. Starting out, the basis for this program, really one of the bases for the program was the 2012 Rural Jobs and Innovation Challenge. There were several awards made in that, and if you Google those awards, there'll be descriptions of the projects that have come together, and really that's a precursor to this program, and that's the 2012 Rural Jobs and Innovation Challenge that took place through USDA. So with that, the timing for RISE is ideal for low-income communities. It's really a once-in-a-generational opportunity to build back stronger. These communities can recover from the impacts of COVID and grow from the bottom up. And that's the heart of this program, to create jobs, create businesses, and innovate, cultivating a regional identity. So as I get into the program, I've got a number of slides. Again, you'll have it available for your reference because we're going to dive into some details. We will have a few polls to kind of break up the presentation as I move forward. And with that, we will get going into this next slide, please. So today we're going to, for the RISE agenda, I'm going to give you a program overview. Mark gave you a good overview earlier, so we'll provide that overview, get into some details, move into eligibility criteria, move into the application itself. Then we're going to move into our scoring criteria on how we've set up the program to review these applications and to make awards, and then we'll have a wrap up with a Q&A at the end. Next slide, please. So moving in the RISE program overview. Next slide, please. So the RISE program, as I mentioned earlier, originated in the latest Farm Bill. That's the 2018 Farm Bill. And the RISE program provides a grant program to help struggling communities by funding job accelerators and low-income rural communities. And it's authorized for $10 million a fiscal year. For fiscal year 2021, we have $10 million that's available for the program. Next slide, please. So the purpose of RISE, as was mentioned earlier, RISE grant funds are utilized for rural jobs accelerator partnerships to develop and enhance innovation centers, providing innovative approaches to workforce development in rural areas. These grant funds allow a region to identify and leverage community assets to better assist new and existing industry clusters, including the use of broadband service for job accelerator programs. RISE grant funds may be used for construction or purchase of a building to establish an innovation center and/or equipment and costs associated with program support of that job accelerator. And we'll get into definitions of these terms in just a little bit. Next slide, please. So in front of you is the citation of the statute that formed the RISE program, authorizing this competitive grant program, establishing job accelerators, the goals being high wage job creation in distressed rural communities and acceleration of the formation of new businesses and strengthening of regional economies. And for rural communities to identify and maximize local assets, and really to connect regional opportunities, networks, industry clusters, et cetera. We'll get into eligible purposes in a moment, but one of the big questions that we've been receiving is, can a RISE grant go directly to my business or to me as an individual? Unfortunately, it cannot. And I can understand looking at the various websites how it could be led to think that, but the grant itself will go to a partnership. So we'll get into eligibility criteria here momentarily, and I can explain that further. Next slide, please. So RISE is authorized in the latest Farm Bill, set up for funding for 5 years. As mentioned earlier, $10 million was made available through September 30th of 2021. The notice of funding availability just published June 16th. And this provides a 45-day application window for applications ending on August 2nd. So in the national office, we'll have a review panel that'll review, score, and recommend applications for funding with the notice of funding awards mid-September and the end goal of obligation by September 30th of this year. That's the government's federal fiscal year end. We also, as Mark mentioned earlier, we have a public comment period for the RISE regulation, and that ends 60 days after publication. The deadline for that is actually August 16th. So that's an opportunity to pull that down off the Federal Register, provide comments. As we'll get into it, you'll see how we took comments from last year where we posed pertinent questions to get feedback as we started to develop the RISE regulation itself. Next slide, please. So last year in 2020, we had multiple listening sessions that were held for RISE. We received a number of good public comments in response to specific questions that we posed. And we took these comments and we kept those in mind as we were working parts of the regulation, including application requirements, benchmarks for successful projects. What are we anticipating is a successful project to fund with RISE? Scoring metrics and sustainability metrics were looked at as well. So we received a lot of good input through that process. And again, through this final rule, we're soliciting comments from you to utilize in the regulatory process. Next slide, please. So this just gives you a little graphic. It's my chicken scratch, but it's, common themes that popped up as we were gathering comments from these sessions and evaluating them in the course of writing the RISE regulation. Next slide, please. So the RISE regulation was written with a goal of limiting burden and allowing flexibility of eligible costs within the framework of the 2018 Farm Bill. And as I said earlier, really considering what a successful RISE project would look like. And that emphasized the weight and the scoring criteria, which we'll cover momentarily. Next slide, please. So a RISE application template was developed for the program, and the template follows what is contained in the regulation itself, but gives you a user-friendly guide for the application. It's located online as well, and it's available in grants.gov. So through this PowerPoint, you can click the hyperlink to take you to grants.gov to pull that application. We do have the application on our USDA website as well. And when you go in and you go under the RISE program, you'll see a copy of that same template, but it must be filed through grants.gov. Next slide, please. So some thresholds in the RISE grant program: the minimum is $500,000, the maximum is $2 million, and it is a cost sharing program. The grant can cover a maximum of 80% of eligible project costs, and not more than 10% of the RISE grant may be used for indirect costs. And it does have a 4-year term associated with the grant. Next slide, please. So getting into matching funds, again, the matching requirement is 20%. The applicant is responsible for securing the matching funds for total eligible project costs not covered by the grant funds. So for RISE, the non-federal share of the total eligible project costs can be in the form of third-party equity contributions, including donations, in-kind and in-kind contributions of fairly valued goods and services. But these third-party contributions, these in-kind contributions, have to be tied to the RISE project itself and must be designated in terms of matching funds for the project. Next slide, please. So we're going to move into RISE eligibility criteria. Next slide, please. And eligibility under RISE, this program is a bit different than other programs at Rural Development, and particularly in our business programs. RISE applicants are Rural Jobs Accelerator partnerships. So that's defined as entities who are comprised of key community and regional stakeholders. So it's a working partnership that comes together under an agreement. We'll get into that in just a minute. But that is the applicant under RISE, and there will be a lead applicant out of that group that, it could be 2+ entities, but out of that group, there's a lead applicant that'll do the official application, but the applicant as a whole is a partnership. Next slide, please. So getting into details on my last comment, RISE eligible entities, they must be a partnership formed on or after December 20th, 2018. So why is that date significant? That's the date of the Farm Bill, when the Farm Bill was enacted. And we've received questions in this regard in terms of, I'm an entity that's older than December 20th, 2018, and that's fine. But what we're talking about is the partnership that's coming together to apply for the RISE grant. So this partnership forms, they form their partnership and they have an agreement in place, and that must be formed on or after December 20th, 2018. And really it's 1 in 1 is how I call it. If you look on the left, you have a green bubble, and on the right, you have a orange bubble. But in the green bubble, that the RISE applicant partnership must consist of one or more of the following. It can be a state, tribal, or local government, an entity of such, a land grant college or university, a rural nonprofit cooperative, or a private entity. So that's, you have to have one out of that group, at least one, plus a lead applicant. And that lead applicant must come from a district organization, a tribe, political subdivision of a tribe, or a consortium of tribes, state and local governments or political subdivisions, institutions of higher education, public or private nonprofit organizations. So as I mentioned earlier, each one of these entities, you know, we're not expecting that entity to have come into legal existence, you know, December 20th or later, but the partnership must be formed on that date or later in terms of for RISE eligibility. Next slide, please. So at this time, we're going to move into our first polling question, and I'll turn it over to our support. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone again. Our first polling question for you today will appear on your screen, and we encourage you to take a moment to think about it and respond. If you are a potential RISE applicant or partner organization, what type of entity do you represent? State, tribal, or local government or government entity, a land grant college or university, a rural nonprofit cooperative, a nonprofit entity, or a private entity? We'll give you a moment to respond. Thank you for your feedback. It's very helpful for us to know who's attending, and so that we can respond best to your questions and be as attentive as possible. Once we reach a healthy majority, I'll go ahead and share the results and discuss them. As for now, take a moment to respond. While we're waiting for the rest of those responses to come in, it looks like one of our organizers is interested in responding to a couple of questions. So go ahead, take a moment. Well, maybe they're not ready for that. All right, our majority has responded. I'm going to close the poll. And thank you again for engaging with us today. It looks like 37% of you represent a nonprofit entity, 29% a state, tribal, or local government or government entity, 20% a private entity. Thank you.
And thank you, and thank you for all the respondents. This is Dave Chestnut again, and just wanted to say that, you know, there are a couple questions in there. Yeah, the comment period for the regulation is still open. You can access that through Federal Register at the date of publication, but that is open until August the 16th. So I'll just let Will continue on from there. Also, just for your information, in the handouts, we do have a RISE fact sheet that you may access, as well as this presentation in a PDF format, but we're also recording this and it'll be available on our website at a later date.
All right, well, thank you, Dave. And moving forward in the presentation, and thank you all for your input on the poll. And I know there's a number of private entities, and again, going back to that slide, there's a bubble that shows participating entities, and private entities can very well participate as one of the partners in the partnership. So these are key stakeholders in the region that's defined, community stakeholders, et cetera. So moving on to the next slide, please. So continuing that, in terms, getting back into eligible entities, the RISE Jobs Accelerator Partnership must clearly define a region. So the region itself, the goal of this program, there's broad strokes with it in terms of giving an applicant the ability to define the region that they're targeting. But there's certain requirements of that region. Mark mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, the region must be rural. It must be large enough to contain critical elements of the industry cluster prioritized by the partnership, but yet small enough to enable close collaboration among members of the partnership. And it includes a majority of communities located in a non-metropolitan area deemed a low-income community that has a plan to achieve broadband service and has a population of 50,000 or fewer inhabitants. So there's a lot to that. This is probably one of the more complicated pieces. It's in terms of trying to get the region defined and what we can work with. Keep in mind that the region itself must be rural. The total population of that region, if it exceeds 50,000, and that's our population requirements under our business programs, we're able to look at the areas contained within that region, right? So we actually have a mapping system that you can go in, you can, for any that have worked our other programs, particularly the business and industry loan programs, you're able to go through that link and plug in an address and see how if the mapping indicates rural or urban. But it's okay if the region, we've had this question a number of times, it's okay if the region exceeds 50,000 as long as it is composed of these communities, these towns that are rural. So if anybody's familiar with our community programs, there's some similarities in terms of working for a county. The county may exceed a population threshold, but we're looking at those individual towns and communities. So through our website, there's the ability to go into our mapping tool that can provide that indication to you as you're going through the application process. So next slide, please. So we got another polling question popping up, and I will turn it over.
Yes, our second polling question for you today. It's pretty simple. What region of the United States will your potential RISE application serve? We'd love you to take a moment and just let us know. And also this information is helpful to inform other applicants that may share your region. As soon as I get a good majority, we'll share the results. But for now, just go ahead and let us know which region you're serving. We've got some good responses coming in. Thank you. So far, the South is leading out. Okay. Our responses have kind of slowed down. I think I'm going to go ahead and share the results with everyone. All right, 35% looks like your projects will be covering the South, 28% Midwest, then 23% the West, and finally 14% for the Northeast. Thank you so much for responding and for participating.
Thank you, Jamie, and we'll continue to move forward with more eligibility criteria. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So another key part of the region, one or more members of the partnership must be located in the targeted region, and the partnership may consist of industry entities and other partners outside of that targeted region, but one or more must be actually located in the region that's being focused on in the application. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So getting into RISE eligible costs, think about it this way, that RISE eligible costs cover two general categories: grants for the purpose of constructing, purchasing, or equipping a building to serve as an innovation center in order to establish a job accelerator, and grants for the purpose of establishing and supporting job accelerators and related programs. So within those two parameters, we've got some broad ability, but they must, any type of eligible cost must come under those parameters. Next slide, please. So giving you some more specifics, construction or purchase of a building to serve as an innovation center is eligible. If you're doing that type of purpose, you're constructing or purchasing a building for the innovation center, then that innovation center must be located in a rural low-income community, which establishes and or supports a job accelerator, and then also any equipment needs of the innovation center to support the job accelerator. We can allow an innovation center to be in an urban area, but they must serve a rural region as defined earlier. And we cannot allow construction or acquisition of a building, for the innovation center in an urban area. So we've had that question pop up. Support of the programs to be carried out at the job accelerator itself are permitted. And these programs may include a large number of initiatives, from linking rural communities and entrepreneurs to markets, integrating rural small businesses into a supply chain, expansion of new business formation, high wage job repatriation, innovative processes, technologies, increasing U.S. exports, developing skills of local workforce, et cetera. So there's a number of activities that can be performed at that job accelerator itself. Next slide, please. Reasonable and customary travel expenses directly related to the job accelerator, and then utilities and operating expenses of the innovation center and job accelerator programs and associated programs. So these expenses must tie back to the activities to be conducted with the RISE grant, the activities and the project scope under RISE. They cannot be for other administrative costs of running an operation or other aspects of an entity. Next slide, please. Not more than 10% of the RISE award shall be used for an indirect cost of the applicant associated with administering the RISE grant. So we've got a 10% threshold that's statutory on that for indirect costs. And we get the question about indirect costs, particularly from universities and colleges. Again, we're capped at 10% in terms of the grant. And then when it comes to the match, the third party cost or the in-kind cost must be authorized and validated for that RISE project. So they can't be taken from some other purpose or some other part of the budget. They've got to be deemed for the RISE project that's undertaken in the application itself. Again, the Innovation Center may be physically located in a rural area or in a non-rural area, but if it's in a non-rural area or urban area, the assistance must be provided to residents of a rural area. The Innovation Center must be located in a rural low-income community if funds are used for construction of the Innovation Center. Next slide, please. So we're going to move into our third polling question, and I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Thank you, Will. We'll get our third one launched. Okay. You should see it on your screen. What will the primary purpose of your potential RISE application be? Choose all that apply. So we've got for your options an innovation center construction or purchase, costs directly related to Innovation Center operations, costs directly associated with Job Accelerator programs, or operating expenses of Innovation Center and Job Accelerator programs. Remember to select all that apply. And we recognize this one might take a moment to think about, but do your best. It will help inform. All right, we're getting some good responses. Thank you so much for all of your engagement today, for participating in the polling questions, and for putting your additional questions in our chat box. Please note, if you don't get a direct response today, that your question has been recorded and we will be reviewing them after the session. You also have available as a handout a copy of today's slides and the fact sheet for the RISE program. And hopefully those will answer some of the questions you may have. Also navigate to our website to learn a little bit more. But thank you again. Okay, we're slowing down on responses. I'm going to go ahead and close. And it looks like we've got a great mix of people's responses. We have leading out costs directly associated with Job Accelerator programs, but also operating expenses of Innovation Center and Job Accelerator programs. And then kind of tying it off, the Innovation Center construction or purchase and costs directly related to Innovation Center operations are pretty close. So thank you very much. Will?
All right, thanks, Jamie. So moving on forward. So we get a number of emails just inquiring, as mentioned earlier, entities involved in, it can be various industries, asking if the RISE grant could be utilized for their operation. And again, unfortunately, it cannot directly go to an entity or an individual. Now that entity could be a partner in the partnership, as mentioned earlier, or they really could be a beneficiary of the Job Accelerator programming itself, and that's really the intent of the RISE grant. And so it's more of an indirect feature, but just to be clear on that, grants cannot go to an individual business or an individual. So some moving into ineligible costs, application packaging costs are ineligible. Costs incurred prior to agency receipt of a complete application, funding of political or lobbying activities, payment for assistance to any private business enterprise, payment of any judgment or debt owed to the U.S. government, duplicate current services or support previously provided, funding part of a project without firm commitments, pass-through grants. There's a question that came in about setting up a revolving loan fund out of the grant. We cannot allow that. We've got very distinct purposes for the RISE grant. We do have other RD programs that could be looked at in that regard for revolving loan funds. So again, look at our website, look at our various programs. We have contacts for our state offices who have business program staff that can assist you with the RD toolbox of business programs we have. And finally, funding hemp projects, which are not licensed per the Farm Bill or the Agricultural Improvement Act. That licensing is done through the state Department of Agriculture of that particular state. So that is also ineligible under RISE. Next slide, please. So moving into key definition, we've been talking a lot today about rural job accelerators. So how do we define that under this program? A rural job accelerator is a center or program located in or serving a rural low-income community that may provide co-working space, in-demand skills training, entrepreneurship, and business support, which is located in a rural area. Next slide, please. And what is an innovation center? We've been talking about that as well. So an innovation center, or IC, is a cross-functional place for the planning and creation of new ideas and opportunities for individual and group collaboration. The product of this is to support development of innovative processes, technologies, services, and products for economic development. So the Innovation Center can be used for a wide array of purposes, and we've got those listed, but really there's, you know, we've not tried to really cap all the purposes of the IC, but we still have the broad parameters, you know, as mentioned earlier, of what are eligible costs and, you know, what the RISE grant can be utilized for. One of the questions that we seem to be getting a lot of, we're getting a lot of questions on it, is that for industry clusters, the comments made, we've got multiple industries. And that's fine. We understand that there's multiple industries, or there may be multiple opportunities for that region. The RISE scope and the project should really focus on, one, it's okay if there's some benefits to other industries, you know, through that programming, through that, you know, through the job training programs and you know, the collaboration and the technology and everything that's coming out of that Innovation Center. We understand that there can be multiple. But for the application, really, we're trying to focus on, you know, the key industry sector, but it is okay if there's benefits in other industries. Next slide, please. So what is a high wage job? We've, you know, mentioned that that's one of the goals of the RISE program. And a high wage job is a job that provides a wage that is greater than the median wage for the applicable region. And this is determined by the Department of Labor. So again, it's the median wage for the applicable region. The applicants defining that region. They're, through the application process, telling us that geographic region, that focus, you know, maybe it's multiple counties, maybe a portion of a state, that type of thing. But the data must be provided to indicate that high wage jobs are being projected, you know, versus a median wage for whatever that region is defined as. What is a low income community? We get this question a lot, and that is a community as defined. We go back to the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, believe it or not, all the way back in 86, and it's 45DE. And so under that definition, there's some criteria, and we've got this information on the website. Essentially, the median household income should not exceed 80% of the statewide median household income. There's also a threshold talking about 20% being in poverty. So there's two criteria under that when you review it in terms of what we're trying to get at when we're saying a low income community. So we're not inventing the definition for this. This is already found in the Internal Revenue Code going back to 1986, and it's easy to find. It's a couple bullet points, tells you what that is. Next slide, please. So what is an industry cluster? We've been mentioning that throughout the presentation as well. And under our program, an industry cluster is a broadly defined network of interconnected firms and supporting institutions in related industries that they accelerate innovation, they back the formation of new businesses, they create jobs by taking advantage of assets and strengths of that region in the business environment. Next slide, please. So moving into some key initiatives with the RISE program, and this was really, it goes back to its foundation in the Farm Bill, linking rural communities and entrepreneurs to markets, networks, industry clusters, and other regional opportunities with the end goal of high wage job creation, new business formation, business expansion, and economic growth, integrating small businesses into a supply chain, creating or expanding commercialization activities for new business formation, IDing and building assets in rural communities that are critical to supporting regional economies. Next slide, please. And continuing forward, facilitating repatriation of high wage jobs to the U.S., the deployment of innovative products, processes, technologies, and products. we got products twice. Enhancing the capacity of small businesses and regional industry clusters, including small and disadvantaged businesses, increasing U.S. exports and business interaction with international buyers and suppliers, developing the skills and expertise of local workforces, entrepreneurs, institutional partners, preparing workers for high-wage jobs in that identified industry cluster, and the upskilling of incumbent workers. When we get into scoring in a little bit, you'll see where there's a focus on the demographics of the targeted region that's looked at as we will be evaluating these applications. Ensuring rural communities have the capacity and the ability to carry out the projects relating to housing, community facilities, infrastructure, or community and economic development to support regional industry cluster growth. Next slide, please. So there's a broad number of initiatives with the program that are covered. So a quick breakdown. Think of it this way for a good summary of RISE. There must be an eligible partnership. These are key stakeholders that come together. There are multiple entities. They have a lead applicant. The lead applicant who files the application, who signs the grant agreement, et cetera, with our agency. The threshold of the grant is $500,000 up to $2 million. So it's cost sharing again. There's a 20% match, and the match must be from non-federal sources. And the job accelerator itself, funds are used for new or existing innovation centers to support job accelerators which target a region. And remember, the region is defined by the applicant. And goals of the program are high wage job creation and retention, acceleration of new business formation, and the strengthening of rural economies. Next slide, please. So moving into the RISE application itself, next slide. We're gonna briefly cover these points. RISE applicants are limited to one RISE application per year. We do get questions on this part. If you are designated the lead applicant, the RISE application is tied to you. If you are a participating entity in the group, and one of the members, it's possible that you could be in another RISE application, but if you are the lead entity and you're signing, it's one RISE application per year. We also get the question, we got projects, multiple states. Well, it's going to tie back to your entity. And so you'll have to pick that particular project, that particular region. Again, this is a multi-year program, so there's opportunities to come back and apply, or maybe there's a different type of partnership with a different lead applicant that could be utilized, for another RISE project. But we do get that question. So there's a 4-year time frame on grant fund utilization. There is a 2-phase process included in the RISE regulation. But this year, we just have 1 phase, just because of timing with the notice and the regulation. Due to those time constraints, you'll only participate in the full application process. Next slide. The application template will walk you through all portions of the regulation that's required for the application. And each one of these sections must be addressed by the applicant, including the items that I'll present on the next slide. So we've got it in bullet point, to be easy to follow. You go through title page, table of contents, survey on ensuring equal opportunity for applicants, clarifications on proposal elements. This is where the first phase part of the application would go, but we're not worrying about that this year. It's all included in one. Next slide, please. And then moving forward, we've got our standard forms that are part of all our applications. There's standard form 424, readiness demonstration section, targeted initiatives of the project. A section of the application talks about the potential to produce high wage jobs and benefits for rural, small, and disadvantaged businesses. Regional information, talking about the demographics, that type of thing, and then financial information of the applicant entity, or the partnership, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. So moving into RISE selection criteria, these are our priority points. This is how we'll review the applications and award points in this competition. And we expect this year to be very competitive. We're hopeful we'll get a number of solid applications. And as mentioned earlier, the thresholds are between $500,000 and $2 million. We have 10 million available this year. And we're authorized for 10 million each year. So, I can't say what we will get in the program the next, year. I can only hope it's $10 million, but we'll have to see. But so 10 million this year. So that means our, range of awards realistically are probably going to be, low number 5, high number 15, probably somewhere in the middle, 10 awards. But the program's got a lot of attention. We just have to remain hopeful as to the funding each year. But we are set up as a multi-year program, and that's why we need to get good feedback from you through the regulatory process as we're going through our final rule, because we will have the program available in the years to come. Next slide, please. So all that said, moving into selection criteria, we have a 100-point scale for each application, and points will be allowed for factors indicated by well-documented reasonable plans, which in the agency's opinion provide assurance that the items have a high probability of being accomplished. The point criteria consist of quantitative and qualitative criteria. These projects are complex, so it requires both quantitative and qualitative criteria when reviewing what we see as the best projects moving forward. Next slide, please. So going through these sections, we'll go through this quickly. I know we're coming up on an hour into the presentation. Demonstrated readiness. So this talks about the partnerships, demonstrated readiness. Really think about it, administration. 10 points in this criteria. Next slide. Targeted initiatives, there's 15 points here. I went through the slides as to, targeted initiatives with the RISE program. So we're looking at what is reasonable that can be delivered within 12 months of the grant award. And for those projects leveraging improvements in high-speed broadband service to the region. Next slide. Project support, this talks about the strength of the local support of this project and entrepreneurial commitment. So points will be awarded from the partnership's demonstration of their funding, personnel and technical resources that are committed to the project, inclusion of institutional partners, expanding access to capital, and willingness to potentially invest in these projects that are emerging from the job accelerator. So all that's going to be looked at. 15 points is weighted in this criteria. Next slide, please. So the targeted region, we're looking at, this is where I was talking about, we're looking at demographics here. We're looking at the latest census information. The targeted region has a median household income of 50,000 or less of the state, it's state non-metropolitan household income. Targeted regions residents have educational attainment. We have percentages associated with that. The existing residents of the targeted region will receive direct career training for new employment or upscaling to a high-wage job. The indicator here is really to ensure that the benefits of this grant are directly impacting the rural residents of this region. The identified region has fewer than 50,000 residents, according to the most recent decennial census. So there's a maximum of 20 points. This is a heavy criteria in the scoring. Next slide, please. So this section is really talking about thresholds. If the grant is a smaller grant, it'll get more points. Again, the thresholds are 500,000 to 2 million. The goal of this criteria really is to utilize the RISE grant funds across the country in as many projects as we can. So 10 points on this criteria. Next slide, please. So regional impact will be looked at. This is really what is the, the projected benefits from this project. The industry being looked at, is it classified as emerging? That does the applicant demonstrate that the target industry in the region holds some type of competitive advantage or will enhance competitive advantage to this RISE project? And the applicant demonstrates that the industry provides significant support of regional assets, including broadband, and provides community and economic development support within the region. So that's being looked at under regional impact. Next slide, please. Continuing on that criteria, points are awarded on a scale of 0 to 5 for each of the categories. We realize 5 times 5 is 25, but we wanted to give the possibility of maximizing points in this area. So for each one, you can get 5, but the max is 20 points. So number 4 and 5 in that same criteria is the RISE project's forecasted outcomes align with RISE objectives, and the RISE project will target support to existing industries whose significance in the region may be stagnant or on the decline, but can be enhanced through outcomes of the RISE project. So we're, as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we're trying to build these communities up that have been impacted. Next slide, please. And finally, we have the administrator point. So the administrator who you heard from earlier will apply points. A maximum of 10 points will be applied at her discretion in the scoring project, and that's actually announced in the notice of funding availability. Next slide, please. So moving into the RISE wrap up, next slide, please. And we're a little bit over an hour. We covered a lot of information with you. This is just a food for thought example, and it is by no means speculating what industries, the agency likes or dislikes, but it's just a hypothetical example of a RISE funded project. It's a newly formed partnership. It's formed after the date of the Farm Bill, and it's supposed to say December 20th. Which establishes an innovation center, which provides vocational and educational resources, which help, in this case, broaden the local aquaculture industry. These vocational educational resources help provide a competitive edge by enhancing all value-added processes in the chain of this industry, from raising and harvesting seafood to processing and marketing the product. And additionally, through collaboration, some businesses in this local aquacultural industry work to vertically integrate and providing an innovative and competitive advantage. High wage jobs are the result of this project in the local community. So you see a graphic there, and really, as I mentioned earlier, going back to the 2012 Rural Jobs and Innovation Challenge and the awards made out of that, you can see examples of projects that follow this structure, but there are various industries, and RISE was written with that intent to capture as many industries and regions as possible in scope. Next slide, please. So we have some links for you. We've got a RISE application link, and we've got the RISE regulation link. And again, that's open for public comment. And we do appreciate your comments and appreciate your comments from last year, those that filed those, but you can go through this link and go to the Federal Register and provide public comment there. And the deadline for that, again, is August 16th. That's for the regulation. For the application itself, the deadline is August 2nd. So August 2nd is the deadline for our RISE competition this year. Next slide, please. So we've got the link at the bottom of the page is the website that Mark alluded to earlier. You can go here for all the updates for RISE. We will be putting frequently asked questions document on there, the applications on there, fact sheets on there, any type of announcements. This is our site. This is the page to go to. And the state office contacts above will take you to Rural Development's state offices and the business program staff who administer RISE. Dave Chestnut and myself have been co-working on the program with many, many others. And again, those are our emails. Email's the best right now. We are getting a lot of inquiries, a lot of attention, lots of questions. It's a good thing. But just have a little patience with us. We will get back to you as soon as we can, and we promise to get back to you as soon as we can. But with that, I believe that is the final slide, and I will turn it over for Q&A.
Will, thank you. Yeah, great job. Please take a drink of water and get ready for the question and answer session as we go here. The questions keep popping up pretty much 4 or 5 a minute. So I think Andy Jamalowitz from our public-private partnerships team and Derek Jones have been kind of flagging some of those. So if they want to fire some of those in there, that's well. I can answer just some basic questions. The $10 million, yes, that's $10 million for the entire country. That's what we have through our appropriations this year to obligate by September 30th of 2021. So we encourage applications. We will be getting that funding out in this fiscal year. There will be a program in FY22. Just to highlight that this is a 4-year grant term. So you will make one application for the amount that you need to service your region and build jobs accelerator programs in your region. And then you will be drawing against those funds that we've obligated for your projects over a term of 4 years. There are reporting requirements. There are ways that you will be able to draw these funds for the designated purposes that you have. The applications in your scope of work, as Will mentioned, we know that these are going to be varied projects. They're going to be very detailed in nature, but from a personal point of view and a scoring point of view from the projects in the national office, when we read a project, be as descriptive and succinct as possible, telling us exactly how you're going to benefit your region and how those proceeds are going to be used. The clearer we understand what your project is, incorporates, what the results are going to be, the better a project is going to be looked at as far as awarding points in the scoring criteria to compete. As Will mentioned, we anticipate anywhere between 5 to 15 applicants being awarded. We award projects based on the highest priority points and then go down until we run out of available funds. So the better your project is defined to us, there's qualitative and quantitative factors in the program. So the qualitative are your chance to tell us exactly what you're doing with that program. So Andy, Derek, do you have questions for us?
Yes, we do. The first question is, can institutions of higher education be lead grantees under this program?
In the program, yeah, the lead applicants in the programs can be an institution of higher education as a lead applicant.
Thank you. Okay. Apologies, my screen closed.
Derek, I see a question in here. Are funds allowed for purchase of an existing building and remodeling of that building? As it comes to innovation centers, as far as a physical facility, if you are an existing innovation center, you can be located anywhere, whether it's an urban area, rural area, wherever you're located at. But if you are using RISE grant funds for the purchase of an innovation center, that innovation center must be located in a low-income community, a low-income rural community. So RISE funds can be used for the purchase of that building. If you're purchasing a building, obviously you may need to renovate it to the purposes of delivering the program area. So yes, you can purchase an innovation center with the RISE grant proceeds.
Thank you. Are regional councils of government eligible as a partner organization?
I would say that would be a public body. Will, is that kind of your understanding? A regional council of government, those are regional councils, basically a group of public bodies.
I would say so. I mean, yeah, I mean, and I'm even thinking that there's, you can have an entity of state, tribal, or local government as well. So, yes.
Yeah, and David, Will, there's several questions kind of along the same vein. Is RISE restricted to more of a physical presence, or are digital and electronic innovation centers, eligible for the program?
Yes, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, Will. You got, yeah.
We've had that question pop up early on. It's a good question. And a key part of this is the programming as well. So the delivery of that could be electronic, but we got to make sure that all the other parts of the program are part of the project in terms of you've got a rural region, you've got to focus on low income communities, that type of thing. But going back to a question we had last year where an innovation center, is going to have more of an online presence. We don't want to limit it by, saying that we can't do that. So that's very possible in lieu of a physical presence, but we want to make sure that all the other components of the program are met.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to that. If you're an applicant, if you're a university, you have a physical presence. You may be delivering your programs remotely or virtually, as we've learned over the last 18 months that can be done. But tell us exactly how you're going to be delivering those programs, where you're going to be delivering those programs from. So, there are components to the program. How you deliver your program and create the job training, the jobs accelerator programs for that's totally up to you. We're not going to limit that.
Can an organization be a part of multiple RISE applications? And if so, would it be disadvantageous to any of the applications if they were?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that as a lead applicant of the partnership, so if you're the one that is deemed to be the lead, remember it's 1-on-1, you can only participate, or you can only file one application, be a part of that. But if you're another entity, you could be a participating partner in another RISE application. And that, I don't see, through the scoring and the evaluation, how, that could be detrimental to do that. But we want to make sure that we don't have a lead applicant that's applying for project, A and project B. So that everything's tied to that lead applicant in terms of one RISE application, but you could participate in other ones. And I don't see a detriment if you do that, Dave.
No, not at all. Yeah, you can be a participant in partnerships across the way, but as Will mentioned, a lead applicant can only submit one application annually. Part of the application as well. This is the first year of the program, so we don't have any past statistics to see what score got funded or what was there. So that's not there. But next year, if you are a lead applicant in FY22 and going forward into other years, one of the requirements for future RISE fund applications is that at least 50% of your grant funds have been utilized for the program. So we'll go from there. The other part of it is, if you're involved in multiple partners, from there, you still have to have, a defined region. From there, there's only one region. There can be multiple industries within that region, but the determination of what that region is between you and your partner.
there are several questions related to broadband and if that is a prerequisite or if they already have broadband, would that diminish their application? Can you expound on that a little bit more?
Yeah, Mark Brodziski may help me out with this a little bit as well, but part of the RISE program, we cannot duplicate current services, and that would be USDA services as well. So our rural utility service does a great job with Reconnect and providing broadband service where there is none. What the RISE intent is to enhance broadband service in regions and to innovation centers. And so your plan and what your scope of work is, if, for example, you've got an area or a center, a business or an industry that needs improved or enhanced broadband services, that may be part of your project. But as far as building out broadband and going into that, we have rural utility services provides that service. But as most of you know, and all of us know, that broadband is critical to industry, education, and other services in a community.
Yeah, and Dave, I just adding on to that, as I mentioned in the region should have access to broadband or a plan to achieve broadband service. But again, we don't, through this program, we're not overlapping our broadband programs through RUS, Rural Utility Service.
No, great answers. And just again, it's probably worthwhile, you've presented this before, is that can you expand on the limits of what funds can actually be used for?
Well, that's a generic question, and it's generically written into the statute and the Farm Bill. As far as the primary thing is to support jobs accelerator partnerships to create high wage jobs in low income communities. So from that definition and that language, we've tried to define what the funds can be used for, and they did put some limitations on there what they could not be used for. But you tell us what they're going to be used for. It basically is what your application is going to do. Support has a lot of meanings to it. It could be provided the facility or the building for that innovation center there. It could be developing programs and services. It could be providing equipment to facilitate the training, job training. It could be funds for looking at industry clusters and feasibility studies and models as far as how that industry cluster can enhance their product delivery or expansion into export markets, how that industry cluster can attract high wage, better trained employees and high wage employees. So because it's broad, it's hard to say and specifically pin down, you can only use it for this purpose. We have through the regulation defined what you cannot use it for, but support is a wide open concept. Will, you have anything to add on that?
I don't have much to add. That's to Dave's point, we wrote it with the attempt to facilitate a wide range of projects in this area. We've got kind of large, barriers in terms of innovation center construction, in building. You've got that physical part, you've got the equipment supporting the job accelerator, and then you've got programming and the administrative parts to utilities, all those things to run that center. But within that context of programming, it's a bit wide, but as long as we keep it between the posts there. So.
Yeah, and there was a question that came in about, clarification on number of types of units and rental ownership rules on housing. When we say we can do housing, we're looking at housing development. We cannot be purchasing residential properties or apartment buildings or anything else with this. So it's not for that residential feature. It's more for potentially planning residential communities or infrastructure planning for residential communities. We're not looking at crossing over into the rural housing service and their programs of of providing funds for residential properties. I know we've got others. There's an application. Can an application include both construction and program? And yes, the purposes can be multiple purposes of the grant within your grant application. As far as we know that you can build an innovation center in a low-income community, but you also need funds to support that project, and you may also need funds to support training programs in that project. So yeah, it can be for multiple purposes within the grant. And the grant funds in your scope of work, you should detail as to when you're going to be using the funds. That got into the scoring criterion. You know, how quickly can you get the funds out? With, you know, is it within the first 12 months? What's your plan? You can do planning in the first year. You can say, you know, we may do feasibility, we may do others type programs. It may take us a little while to set it up. So you tell us how you're going to utilize those grant funds from there. But it's a 4-year grant. You should be telling us how much you anticipate, what your budget would be for the use of those funds, and what the purpose of those funds are over that 4-year term.
Hey, thank you, David. I've just seen this one a couple of times in the Q&A, is asking what documentation would be required as part of the application to identify the partnerships and partners.
We don't need a 50-page partnership agreement, please. We don't want to do that. I mean, it should be a formal partnership between entities, and we're not defining how you do that as far as, but the partnership agreement should determine who's going to be responsible for what pieces of that, the administration of the grant proceeds and delivery of the programs. So it can be, I'm not going to say informal, but it must be a written partnership agreement between the parties as it relates to delivery of the grant and administration of reporting to the agency on various factors. Will, anything on that as well?
No, I agree. I mean, we need enough documentation to, you know, particularly check that the partnership has that formation past the December 20th, 2018 date for Farm Bill purposes. But we're not interested in, you know, reading volumes of legalese on the formation. So just enough to get us, you know, demonstrate that to us is sufficient.
Can you expound a little bit on in-kind match as in regards to when it is expected to be expended, and how can that match qualify as part of the application?
So as the grant is being drawn, the request must match up. So if, you know, let's say 80 cents of the grant is being drawn, there must be 20% of that match evident. So we're looking at this in the sense that there'll be multi-draws. The in-kind has to, it needs to make sense in terms of valuation, how that's being determined, if there's in-kind involved. You know, if it's, you know, we've got an employee that's, you know, we're paying $50 an hour, so many hours for this particular activity, that type of thing. It needs to be evident, demonstrated, and it needs to be reasonable, you know, within reason in terms of whatever work is being performed for that task. So I know all that's very broad. The question's broad because it's going to depend on, you know, the specific tasks. But as the requests are being made to draw the grant, that match will have to be indicated. Now, we do look at the match going back to scoring in terms of, you know, that comes into play, but really it comes down to when you're drawing funds and then also towards closeout of the grant, you know, we're validating that those matching funds will be available.
Yeah, and again, in-kind services should be directed toward the purpose of the grant as well, and that's what we're looking at. But there's a requirement that the RISE grant proceeds will not pay for more than 80% of the project costs for a project. This is we're dispersing funds based on what you're telling us that you've used the funds for. So during the term of the 4-year grant period, you can do that in kind or the cash throughout the grant period. There's questions about small businesses, and yeah, we understand. We understand small businesses. In our definition, we use an SBA definition for a small business, but and the grant proceeds, the RISE grant partnership will assist all businesses in a region and all industry businesses within an industry cluster. That can be small businesses, large businesses. You will define to us what businesses and industries you are supporting. So yes, we do care about small business. Those do drive the economy, and especially a rural economy. So we have full awareness of that, but a private small business is not an applicant for the program. They may be a beneficiary of the program results.
Thank you. Will mentioned grant disbursements in his previous response. For this particular grant, is there a disbursement schedule, or is that up to the agency and the awardee?
That's up to the awardee to submit requests for disbursement of funds for the program uses that they've had. We don't want to get funding requests every week, so plan ahead. A lot of our programs, we look on a quarterly basis, but it also has to be, and we understand it has to be based on the cash flow needs of the partnership and the programs being delivered. But that's determined by the grant recipient.
Okay, great answer. I know Will has touched on this. I know it's in the documentation, but it's come up multiple times here. It says here, the grant program states to create and augment high wage jobs. How do you define high wage jobs? For many rural communities, high wages will vary across regions and even within a state.
So as the applicant, you're presenting that information to us. That's, part of the flexibility of this is you're defining your region, and within that region, depending on who you're focusing on, the communities and towns, what you'll look for is the median wage of those towns, those communities, and then how that compares in terms of Department of Labor, and how wage greater than that median wage for that applicable region. So it's going to, you're looking, if you've got multiple communities, or maybe you have one community, you're looking at that data from the Department of Labor, and you're looking at a wage greater than the median wage. But again, the region is defined by the applicant. So you could have a case where you've got multiple ones, and you have to present that the projected out wages will be greater than the median wage as determined for community A, B, and C, that type of thing.
Yeah, but we're specifically using the Department of Labor statistics for what a median wage is in that region that you determine. So if you are enhancing industries and employment opportunities with a higher than median wage as determined by the Department of Labor, that's what we're looking at. So it's hard to say what a dollar median wage is here from there, and we may also get into industry specifics, although that's drilling down a little further than we would like to do. And I see we're coming up on 1 o'clock. Again, this session's being recorded. Will be available on our website in the near future as well. And we have every question that you put into the question chat will be delivered to us, and we will have a frequently asked questions document available on our website, not only from those that Will and I have received over the last week and prior, about the program, but as well as some of your questions on here so that we may have that readily available for you. I would say pay attention within the next week or so. Go back into our website, rd.usda.gov. Click on and find the RISE program, find our other programs that are available to you. I personally like the economic development entities and nonprofit entities, public bodies, tribal entities to use our intermediary relending program and our rural micro entrepreneur assistance program, where we are loaning you money so that you can create a revolving loan program to loan to small businesses in your region, in your area. So again, we've been talking RISE for the last 90 minutes and we appreciate your participation, but do not ignore other programs that may assist the goals and initiatives that you've set out for your communities. And with that, I don't know if we want to end it now at 1:02 p.m. Eastern time. Just say that, and one more thing, people have asked me about opportunity zones, promise zones, other declared special initiatives through other agencies and entities. And we have defined in the regulation what sources we're going to use to determine a low income community. So the fact that you may be an opportunity zone doesn't automatically mean that you qualify as a low-income community. There are components of a low-income community and opportunity zones, but we'll be using the low-income community data as placed forward through the Internal Revenue Service. Is that correct, Will?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Internal Revenue Code 1986.
Okay. And with that, Andy, you want to take it out, or we can get our moderator to take us out of here. But again, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your interest in RISE.
Yep, I just would echo that. Thank you, David and Will. Excellent job here today. We want to reach out and say really thanks to all the participants, all the people who registered for this. Thanks for your interest in rural development, and particularly the Rural Innovation Stronger Economy program. A new program for us. We're probably as excited as you to get this rolled out. And as David indicated, we will be having some follow-up for you. We'll check the website, but we also have the distribution list. So we'll be trying a multifaceted way to get back to you with the link to the recording of this webinar, as well as some additional follow-up on the Q&As that we've received here today. So again, just on behalf of Rural Business, our Administrator Karama Neal, we thank you for your participation today.
Thank you for joining today's session. This concludes the event.